Hello, I'm Robert, and welcome to my channel, where I discuss everything automated algorithmic trading, or simply algo trading. Today I'm going to talk about my live account. And here we are on the screen, my open live trades. And this is important because my region is entering tornado season. Severe thunderstorms, hail the size of baseballs, and countless other difficult weather anomalies. Now, I've talked previously about being without electricity for 2 days in what was considered one of the worst storms. In fact, that took place last year. But that's not the first time this region has been through some very severe and devastating weather. In fact, in 1998, just a few years after I moved into this region, we went through a snowstorm that left a lot of people in the region without electricity, myself included. I spent a couple of days without electricity, but a city about 5 kilometers away from me spent 2 weeks without electricity. That was 2 weeks without hot water or any heat whatsoever if they had electric furnaces. It was a problem for a lot of people, and it really affected the region drastically. It opened my eyes to the severity of the region and the importance of preparedness. Only having lived here at the time for a couple of years, I really didn't have a clear understanding of just what the weather was going to be like. But it impressed upon me something very critical that I took from that point forward. Always be prepared for the worst case situation. A city of several million people without electricity for 2 weeks and one of the most dangerous and devastating snowstorms that hit the region is catastrophic. We had temperatures well below zero and wind chills that were incredibly dangerous. Exposed skin would suffer frostbite literally within just a few minutes. The duration of this weather was extreme and existential, and it caused a huge problem for the most endangered in the region, the elderly and the disabled. Not having the services of electricity, not being able to heat water, not even being able to cook food in most cases, as very few people in this city have natural gas or some other resource that they can create heat with. This situation caused a very critical issue, and it caused a horrific circumstance in the humanitarian context. It's what it and many other situations I have lived through for the last 25 years have given me a perspective of understanding that I need to take those lessons to heart in my trading. So as we look at my live trades I actually have open right now, it looks like a lot. It looks like I have a lot of money at risk. But the truth is, the reality of my trading is that I only have very little of my money at risk. Only 9% of my budget is at risk. This is a critical point because as we prepare for another tornado season, I could end up like I did last year. A couple of days with no internet, no electricity, no phone service, no way of managing my investment. I hope that doesn't happen, but nonetheless, because I keep my risks so low, because I practice that worst case scenario plan in my trading constantly, I don't have to worry about my trades. I may take a few stop losses, but I won't have to worry about my account being liquidated. That is absolutely, undeniably a critical game changer psychologically. Psychologically, not having to deal with this on top of whatever nature might throw at me is a huge benefit. Last year, when people started going to their investment accounts to withdraw money to be able to cover expenses and to try to just rebuild everything they lost from the storms, many of them found their accounts liquidated. They were over leveraged. They had too many positions open. They didn't have enough risk mitigation in place to protect their accounts. And they couldn't do anything about it simply because they had no way to get to their broker. That is one of the dangerous aspects of any kind of trading, more so for automated trading. Nature is a nightmare, and when nature goes on a rampage, you have to think about what if. What if is critical. Even when you look at my results, my profits, you can clearly see, even with my reductions and my profits, I only made 5 cents net trade on my most recent position because of the number of positions I have open. But I still continue that reduction faithfully every single trade because it guarantees I have a way of protecting my account. That is the absolute most critical thing that cannot be overstated. You have to protect your initial balance. You have to protect what profits you've taken. And there may be a point that a winning trade may simply be a break-even. But the truth is, that's fine. I'm fine with a break-even trade because in the long run, the part that really matters is my realized and unrealized profit. Now, I'm still recovering from a database crash roughly 6 months ago, but that's fine. My original capital was never in danger. That is a huge psychological game changer. When your original capital is never in danger, it gives you a relief, a critical point of thinking that helps you psychologically deal with the nightmare that might happen in a market. For example, if we look on a chart, we have been in a brutal uptrend the last couple of days. Well, really the last couple of weeks. And that uptrend now looks like it's beginning to level out. That is where you really need to pay attention to the market. We have a dynamic shift between the geopolitical news of the Russia-Ukraine war, tariffs from the current administration, various countries pushing their own tariffs, change of power between various political organizations, the market is in a state of turmoil at the moment. It can't decide if it's happy or sad because it just doesn't know. The potentiality of that really is confusion and volatility. And we see that in the markets. We see massive amounts of people with fear progressing more and more to selling their assets. That will cause opportunities if you understand those opportunities. Fear drives panic. And that brings us really to one critical component that doesn't get talked about enough. We often hear about the differences between fear and greed in the market. And most of the time, it's done through calculations and indicators that determine buying and selling. But that really isn't the entire picture. That isn't the truth about fear and greed, and really the encompassment of just how important understanding fear and greed really is. So let's talk about fear and greed. The real metric of fear and greed that is based upon real human emotions. This is something I spent the last year researching. And in fact, to date, I have analyzed 42,000 different news articles, both financial and non-financial, to get an understanding, an assessment of how human emotion affects trading, even when somebody like myself is using a machine to trade for me. And the implications of how human emotion really plays out is much more obvious than what we would even really think about. As I looked back at last year and what I went through, and I look at the results of what I have been researching, I saw a lot of things in the market. Actions and reactions, even if somebody adjusted their risk assessment, or lowered the risk, or changed their position sizes. Fear and greed had a clinical and definitive place in those decisions. Some of the most common impacts of fear that aren't always obvious is the back of the mind thinking about putting food on the table, whether or not the kids need clothes, putting gas in a car. Some of the most mundane thoughts that go through our head while we're in the process of trying to set up our trading automatically impact our decisions in the most sublime ways imaginable. This understanding helps us really understand the market better. Humans trade by emotions. Even when they use machines, they still trade by emotions. When I adjust my own risk assessment, even if I'm concentrated at the charts, seeing nothing but numbers, somewhere in my subconscious, things like the rent, mortgage, the electric bill, this week's groceries, whatever is actually there, influencing my decisions. At the same time, greed kicks in the most unusual ways as well. If, for example, bad news comes out for Apple, if Nvidia doesn't meet their earnings call, whatever you might be interested in, if you see the price of eggs dropping, considering the current inflation rate, all these factors funnel into the emotion of greed. Now, fear and greed themselves aren't necessarily direct emotions, but rather, and more accurately, reactions. Reactions to the environment we live in. And by understanding those reactions, by understanding how humans connect to their environment through continual observation of news, whether it's financial news, whether it's political news, weather events from different countries or even a few jurisdictions away from where you live, an obituary, a firefighter saving a cat from a tree. All of these elements play into either fear or greed through the basic, most fundamental human emotions we share. That is an absolute that cannot be ignored. And that is critical when we understand the significance of the market implications in general. Fear and greed, as an indicator, should not be a technical analysis of the market, but rather it should be a fundamental analysis of who and what we are as humans. And that is what we see right now on this chart. We see right now a clear example of a global human sentiment about what is going on around us. This information has been graphed from a wide variety of news sources around the world, covering a vast array of topics, from the markets to daily life in Mumbai or some little town in England. Wherever I could find information that gets past the political rhetoric of a global cycle, the international propaganda, and I get down to real basics that matter to people. Food costs at their local grocery, weather situations for when they drive back and forth to work, situations that transcend politics, situations that look past the manipulation of the news cycle but into the very fundamental factors that each and every one of us share, no matter where we live. It's that realization that helped me build this system. While I do take into account the global cycle of news, the emphasis here is on what makes us human, what makes us almost identical no matter where we live. The very fundamentals of simply keeping a roof over our head, or food on the table, or dealing with the natural weather in our region. All of these elements we share, no matter what our political beliefs are. These are what make us human. These are what bring us together. It's these instruments, these tools, this knowledge that helps us see the world in a way that helps us understand the humanity of each other. That has been my biggest focus throughout my entire programming career, to bring technology to humanity. And this shows how that can be done by looking at how we are affected in ways that we might not even understand. For example, the current global setting with tariffs, wars, conflicts, all of that is taking a toll psychologically, not just in one country, but on a global stage, through a massive collective of who we are as humans. We all are experiencing this shift in dynamic, the uncertainty of our futures, of our stability, of the resources we depend on our daily lives. That is where we have to focus our attention when we're trading. A good analogy is for gardeners, really, when you're hungry, you don't go plant a tomato. You don't go plant green beans or radishes or whatever your favorite fruit or vegetable is. And that's really true with trading. If you're desperate for money, don't go put it in the market. Because just like the garden, it's going to take several months before you see the first fruits. And even then, those first fruits aren't going to provide you a meal. It's going to take several years before that garden is ever going to grow to be able to providing you a full-fledged meal. Through those years, you're going to go through a lot of emotions, a lot of ups, a lot of downs. That's going to affect the quality of your garden. It's also going to affect the quality of your trades. Understanding how human emotion plays a role is critical. Now, this information is updated constantly to my subscribers. So if you want to get your hands on this kind of information, sign up to my Patreon. The link will be in the description. It takes a lot of resources to scan this much news. And it takes a lot of work to present it in a way that is meaningful. So if you want to help continue building this technology, please support the work. Because understanding human emotions is the cornerstone of our species. It's the only way we're going to be able to progress forward and move past the things that really divide us. If you have any questions, please share your thoughts. Leave a comment. Thank you for watching, and until next time.